our top story, the outrageous treatment of General Mike Flynn. You might remember him. He was President Trump's first national security advisor. He was essentially forced to make a guilty plea. And the FBI dove deep into what General Flynn did, and now we are going to uncover some of the FBI's misconduct that should concern every American. And because I don't want to sound like an alarmist here, but literally what they did to him, if this could happen to him, it can happen to you. This all has to do with conversations that General Flynn had previously had with the Russian ambassador. And knowing this, it appears as though the FBI literally went out of their way to entrap General Flynn. And when you hear the videos that we are going to play for you, you will understand what I'm talking about. This was all done under the watchful eye of former FBI Director Jim Comey. Newly released documents, you've got to see these, uncover the plot that this ignited. And the president responded himself yesterday. Take a listen.
General Flynn was under enormous pressure, and it was an artificial pressure because what they did to General Flynn was a disgrace. Well, it was a total disgrace. It's shocking. What they tried to do to destroy him and to hurt this presidency was perhaps in our country's history, there's never been anything like it. An absolute disgrace. What happened to General Flynn should never happen again to a citizen of this country.
So how did all this transpire in the first place? Well, check this out. Former FBI Director Jim Comey admits that the nonchalant way that he approached his FBI agents was how they got into the White House. Check this out. He literally admits it.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine two FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration.
I wouldn't have gotten away with it. I mean, that says a lot right there. We've got so much to get to. One of the people in the White House at the time that this all went down, and one of the closest people to General Flynn, was Katie McFarland. She was the Deputy National Security Advisor. She's now out of the administration and has a new must-read book titled Revolution: Trump, Washington, and We the People. It's amazing. And we are fortunate to have her join us today to tell us what she knew all about this. KT, thanks for being here.
Pleasure and an honor.
KT, let me ask you, first of all, did you discuss with General Flynn why he was going to plead guilty?
No. In fact, Sean, when General Flynn left the White House, on the advice of his lawyers and later on the advice of mine, I wasn't allowed to talk to him. In fact, to this day, I've not been allowed to talk to him. But I could tell by the questions that I was asked when I was interrogated by the FBI in the Mueller investigation, and piecing that together with some of the things that he said, that we were both being treated very similarly. They showed up at my door unannounced, implied that I didn't need a lawyer, said that they were just on a fact-finding mission. Later, they seized all of my files and records, my text messages, emails, phone logs, calendars, and then they distributed them. They cherry-picked and then let me see what they wanted me to see. It sounds like the same thing happened to General Flynn. And they were setting him up, they were setting me up for perjury traps, and in his case, blackmail, because they were willing to blackmail him over his son. His son, they were going to
be... KT, that's important right there. Do you think that that's why he pled guilty, though? Because you bring this up, and I don't think people get this. So you think that they leveraged him and said, we're going after your son if you don't plead guilty?
Well, I think several things happened. I think that, first of all, their initial objective was to get Flynn to either claim or admit guilt to a crime he didn't commit, or to implicate Trump in some crime that Trump didn't commit. They certainly came after me to suggest I could implicate Flynn in crimes I didn't think he committed, and as well as Trump. I said no. I think Flynn had probably said no to that as well. But then they came after his son and did the trade. And I think Flynn did plead guilty to a crime he didn't commit. If you look at his statement on the day that he pled guilty, he said, I did this for the best interests of my family. Well, what does that mean? I mean, it's not really, I'm guilty, I did something terrible, I did something wrong. He pled guilty, and then he said it was in the best interest of his family. To me, at the time, I thought, well, that's probably what had happened, that they blackmailed him.
It's interesting.
And
It came up
he
today.
sacrificed his son to his son.
Yeah, it came up today at the White House briefing, Kayleigh McEnany's first briefing. She was asked about this, and they kept saying, well, he pled guilty. Again, I think it's a really, asking her that question probably isn't the best place to go for it. But let me ask you this. When Director Comey says he sent these two folks over, he tells Flynn, hey, I want to talk to you. He doesn't go through the White House counsel's office. Flynn meets with them. Does he talk to you right after that happened, and what does he say? So he comes out of the sit room. He's met with these two agents. What did he think was going on, and what did he tell you?
Well, I didn't talk to him about that. It wasn't even on his schedule. It was something that came up at the last minute. I was in my meetings. He was in his meetings. As you know, that although we were working, right side by side during the transition, once the administration started, he had different responsibilities from mine. So I wasn't in every single meeting with him. I did find out after the fact that he had met with him, and I asked him if he had a lawyer with him, and he said no, and I suggested that was probably a big mistake. But I think that, the interesting thing is when listening again, as you've just played the clip about Comey, my guess is that that's going to be the nail in the coffin of James Comey.
Let me show you.
Because as more and more information is coming out, it's pretty clear that this was a threat to extort, to blackmail, to trick, to do all sorts of bad stuff. And Comey has just put himself at the head of that effort by that very clip.
Yeah, so just to recap, Comey doesn't go through anyone at the White House. He sends two FBI agents to meet with Flynn, doesn't tell him why, and I get it. I mean, you're the national security advisor. You say, sure, I'm going to meet with you. He has no idea it's a setup. He takes him down to the Situation Room, thinking that he's just having this meeting with these agents. But here's the information that has come out since, KT, that I want to show you. I'm sure you've seen this already, but the notes from the FBI agents have come out, and I want to put them on the screen for everybody to see. You've got to see this to believe it. This is what the agent says, their notes. We've got to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired. How concerning is that, KT?
Just think about it for a minute. These are permanent bureaucrats. They're accountable to nobody. They weren't elected by anybody. They can't be fired. They didn't like President Trump. They didn't like the results of the election. They didn't like General Flynn. So what did they do? They set out to, I think, use Flynn to destroy the administration. He was going to be the first domino to fall. And I think there was a second reason, though, which hasn't really been brought out and is worth looking into. General Flynn and I and the president, and you were probably in some of those meetings, one of the initial discussions we had about the intelligence community was it needed to be streamlined. It needed to be reformed. There were 16 sprawling government agencies, half the time contradicting each other, often getting things completely wrong. And Flynn, having been head of the Defense Intelligence Agency and having done significant reforms, and not only in the way they constructed themselves, but in the way they gathered and analyzed intelligence, especially on the battlefield, he wanted to do the same for the intelligence community. So I think in part, this was a preemptive strike. This is a preemptive strike by guys like Comey and McCabe and others who liked things very much the way they were and had no interest in having their little sinecures and their little empires being questioned by anybody, including the President of the United States and his senior-most advisors.
KT, you've brought this up a couple times, and I think this is important to note. General Flynn didn't have any need or thought to bring a lawyer because he wasn't told to. When they came to you, they don't seem to tell you to bring a lawyer. If you're very connected, you know a ton of people. General Flynn's obviously connected. You can handle this. I know financially it's been horrible for you and General Flynn, but if you were an average American right now, how concerned should you be about what just happened? Somebody who doesn't have the connections and resources and background that you and General Flynn have.
I was probably the most powerful woman in the West Wing of the White House. General Flynn was one of the most powerful people in the entire administration, and they could come after us with no hesitance. I mean, bragging about it, targeting people. I think it's just terrifying that they decided they didn't like the President of the United States. They were going to get rid of him, and they were quite open about it. They talked to each other about it. They even kept notes, as you just showed one of the notes. My guess is it goes much higher than this, because this is not a bunch of rogue, mid-level intelligence agents who decide to take down a president of the United States. This goes much higher because, rogue intelligence agents in the middle of the bureaucracy, this is not a mid-level government guy deciding to do it. This will go much higher. And I find it just terrifying because they almost got away with it. They came within an inch of getting away with it. They thought they were getting away with it. If Bill Barr hadn't become Attorney General, if he hadn't appointed John Durham, who's investigating all of this, investigating all the investigators, they would have gotten away from it. One of the things I find really interesting is in some of the documents that have come out in the last 48 hours, there's something called SCO, 3 initials at the top of some of these documents. What does that mean? It means those documents, which were exculpatory for General Flynn and for others, they went to the Mueller investigation. What was the Mueller investigation doing? They were going after the president. They were going after Flynn. They were going after me and others, and they knew there was nothing to it. So it's not just 1 or 2 bad apples. This is the whole rotten barrel.
Yeah, I still think every American needs to understand what happened to General Flynn and to you as well, because, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, this is costing you thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend yourself for something that, frankly, you were never a target of.
No, I was not. I mean, let's say it's high 6 figures, shall we say, and I think General Flynn is probably, I don't know, $5 or $6 million in legal fees. Now, people don't understand that you're never reimbursed for that. Your insurance doesn't pay for it. Your former government agency doesn't. And that, because of that fact, the people, the FBI, the Mueller investigation, they know it. So they know they can not only intimidate you, they can deny you access to your files, they can set you up in perjury traps, they can do gotcha questions. But they know at the end of the day, even if they can't charge you with a crime because you didn't commit one, they can bankrupt you. And they use that as a weapon against an awful lot of people. And those are, you know, Sean, those are really powerful tools. You're a military officer, you understand this. These are powerful tools we give the intelligence community and our law enforcement community. And that's a good thing when they're going after terrorists and mass murderers. But they've used those powers and those tools to go after political opponents, or when they didn't like the results of an election, to go after a duly elected president of the United States. Yeah. I mean, you know, you fill in the blank, conspiracy, treason, whatever, but it certainly isn't the United States of America that all of us think it is. And the FBI, who I always thought were the good guys, they were not the good guys in this case.
Yeah. KT, I want to thank you for sharing this story with us. As I said, this is something that should very much concern every single American, because you're right. You get caught doing something or you get accused of something, and the FBI comes and leans on you and says, we're going to bleed you dry. We're going to force you to do something to your family. It backs you into a corner like the likes of which you probably have never seen. And most people don't have the kind of connections and resources that you and General Flynn have. So thank you for sharing your story with us. Congratulations on the book. It's way up the charts. It's a must-read. Thank you for being here, and hope to have you back soon.
Thank you very much. And everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and get back to work, America.
Will do. Will do.